Hello, everyone. It's June 14th, 2026. I'm Marie Johnson, and you are listening to Histories of Horror.
And I'm A.O. Knuckles. Today, we're shifting our gaze from the unsolved, cryptic puzzles of the East Coast to the sun-drenched, asphalt-heavy landscape of Southern California. We're diving into a case that is uniquely horrifying, not because of a mysterious linguistic signature, but because of how a predator used the literal infrastructure of a growing nation to hide his monstrous deed.
When we look at serial killers, we often wonder how they manage to dispose of bodies without being seen. Where did they find the isolation? Today's subject didn't look for abandoned woods or rural ditches. He used heavy machinery, massive construction zones, and thousands of tons of fresh concrete.
This is the story of Mack Edwards. To the world, he was a hard-working, heavy equipment operator, a family man, and a trusted neighbor in the Los Angeles area during the 1950s and 1960s.
But beneath that blue collar, everyday exterior was a calculated child predator and a serial killer. He didn't just walk among the community, he actively shaped the landscape they drove on every single day.
So imagine driving your children to school on the newly constructed Golden Gate Freeway or the Santa Monica Freeway, completely unaware that beneath the very asphalt your tires are rolling over, a monster may have buried his victim.
It sounds like a horrific urban legend, but as the investigation unfolded, the reality proved to be far worse than any ghost story. Let's break down how this real life nightmare began to unravel.
The reign of Mack Ray Edwards didn't end because of a brilliant police work or a breakthrough in forensics. Nope, it ended because a teenage girl fought back. And because Edwards' own physiological armor finally cracked.
On March 6, 1970, a 15-year-old girl named Craig Ann Dowell was kidnapped from her home in Silmar, California. Edwards, armed and imposing, snatched her in broad daylight. But Craig Ann was resilient. She watched for an opportunity, fought like hell, and managed to escape her captor's clutches before he could carry out his ultimate plan.
The escape shook Edwards. For years, he operated with absolute impunity, but with a living witness who could identify him, the walls began closing in. Just days later, on March 11, 1970, Mack Ray Edwards did something incredibly rare for a prolific serial killer. He walked into the Los Angeles Police Department's Foothill Division Station.
He didn't just turn himself in for the attempted kidnapping of Craig Ann Dowell. He walked up to the desk officer and calmly announced that he had a confession to make. He wanted to talk about the children who had gone missing in the area over the last 2 decades.
Investigators were skeptical at first. Jailhouse confessions and false self accusations happen all the time. But as Edwards began detailing names, dates, and locations, specific details that had never been released to the public, the room turned ice cold.
He looked the detectives in the eye and confessed to the brutal murders of 6 young children. And then came the detail that sent shockwaves through the department: how he hid.
Edward was an operator for the International Union of Operating Engineers. During the post-World War II boom, Los Angeles was expanding at breakneck pace. Freeways were being sliced through the valleys and mountains daily. Edward was right there, driving the bulldozers and earth movers.
His modus operandi was terrifyingly efficient. He would abduct a child, commit the crime, and then bring the body to an active freeway construction site where he was scheduled to work. He would dig a deep trench with his heavy equipment, place the victim inside, and cover it up. By the next morning, a fresh layer of dirt, gravel, and thousands of pounds of concrete would seal the site forever.
Let's talk about the children whose lives were stolen by this man. There was 8-year-old Stella Darlene Nolan, who vanished from a Compton auction yard in 1953. There was Gary Albert Rochette, just 16, shot and killed in 1968. And Donald Lee Smith, an 11-year-old boy, snatched from a park.
Because of his confession, Police were able to recover three of the victims he named, including Stella Nolan, whose remains were found buried under a freeway off ramp in Santa Ana. But for the others, the geography of Los Angeles had changed too much. Millions of tons of concrete now stood between investigators and the truth.
And the horror doesn't stop with the six he confessed to. Criminologists and detectives firmly believe Edwards was responsible for many more. He is heavily linked to the infamous 1956 appearance of the three Mack children, Brenda, Donald, and Danny, who vanished from their suburban neighborhood and were never seen again. Edwards was a family acquaintance.
The legal system moved swiftly once the confession was secured. In 1971, Mack Ray Edwards was put on trial for the murders. The evidence, backed by his own detailed admissions and the recovery of the bodies, was overwhelming.
He was found guilty and sentenced to death. He was transferred to the San Quentin State Prison waiting for his date with the executioner. But Edward was a control freak. He had controlled the lives and deaths of his victims. He had controlled when he turned himself in, and he decided he would control how his own story ended.
On July 3rd, 1971, while sitting on San Quentin's death row, Mack Ray Edwards took a television cord, fashioned a noose, and hanged himself in his cell. He was 53 years of age.
By dying by his own hand, he took a massive vault of secrets to the grave. He left dozens of California cold cases from the 50s and 60s entirely unresolved.
Decades later, the LAPD and the FBI have reopened various missing children's cases, mapping out Edwards' old construction routes against the drop off dates of missing youth. Modern ground penetrating radar has been used on certain freeway embankments, but digging up active, crucial interstate freeways is a logistical and financial nightmare.
More than half a century has passed since Mack Ray Edwards walked into that police station. The freeways he helped build are now the lifeblood of Southern California, driven on by millions of commuters every single day.
It is a haunting reality, the infrastructure of a city built on the stolen futures of innocent children. Edwards didn't just destroy families, he forced an entire state to permanently, blindly coexist with his crimes.
When the legal system is cut short by a coward suicide, true justice is hard to find. But by continuing to look for the missing and by speaking the names of Stella, Gary, Donald, and the others, we refuse to let him have the final word.
That brings us to the end of today's dark journey. Thank you so much for listening to Histories of Horror.
We appreciate every single one of you. Remember to stay vigilant, look out for, for the vulnerable in your communities, and never take safety for granted.
Absolutely, because sometimes the monsters aren't hiding out in the wilderness. Sometimes they are paving the very roads beneath our feet. Until next time, this has been Histories of Horror. Have a great night.